Money has a way of revealing truths people try to hide. I learned this standing outside my father's study, hearing him discuss my future, or rather the lack of one he'd planned for me. We can't afford both, Linda. Emily's law school has to take priority. Sarah will have to make do with the diner job. My fingers dug into the doorframe as I listened. 22 years of being the family afterthought crystallized in that moment. The golden child, Emily, would get her shot at becoming a prestigious attorney while I'd be slinging hash browns at Pete's diner. But Robert, we promised both girls we'd help with their education. My mother's voice wavered, weak as always. Emily has real potential, Sarah. Sarah just needs to be practical. I stepped back from the door, my chest tight with something between rage and vindication. All those years of telling myself I was imagining things, that my parents couldn't possibly favour Emily so blatantly, gone in an instant. The house felt suffocating. I grabbed my keys and jacket, needing to escape before I did something stupid like confront them right then. But fate had other plans. Sarah, where are you going? Emily appeared at the top of the stairs, perfect as always in her designer outfit. Mum's making dinner. Family night, remember? I almost laughed. Family night? What a joke. Not feeling well, I managed, heading for the door. Wait, Emily descended the stairs, concern etched on her face. Is everything okay? You look upset. Everything's fine, just like always, perfect actually, just like you. She flinched at my tone. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Just like my future, apparently. Sarah? The door slammed behind me with satisfying force. I made it halfway down the driveway before my father's voice boomed from the porch. Young lady, get back here right now. I turned, seeing him silhouetted in the doorway, my mother and Emily hovering anxiously behind him. 22 years of swallowed words rose in my throat. Why? So you can tell me to my face that I'm not worth investing in? That Emily's the only one who deserves a future? His face darkened. You were eavesdropping. Damn right I was. And I'm glad I did. Finally got some honesty around here. Sarah, please. My mother stepped forward. We can discuss this. Discuss what? How you've spent years funneling everything to Emily while telling me to be practical, to lower my expectations, to settle. Emily's face had gone pale. That's not fair. Life isn't fair, sis. But you wouldn't know about that, would you? My father's voice turned cold. That's enough. You're being childish and ungrateful. Ungrateful? I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. For what? The lifetime of being second best? The constant comparisons? Or maybe I should be grateful for the diner job you've so generously planned for my future. If you'd shown half the dedication Emily has, I got better grades than she did. I worked 2 jobs through high school while she went to dance lessons and tennis camp. I did everything right, and it still wasn't enough. Silence fell. My mother was crying now. Emily looked stricken. And my father just looked disappointed, as usual. If that's how you feel, he said finally, perhaps you should leave until you've calmed down and can be reasonable. Don't worry, I said, backing away. I'm done being reasonable, I'm done being practical, and I'm done being the family disappointment. I got in my car, hands shaking as I turned the key. Through the windshield, I could see them still standing there. The perfect family tableau, minus the inconvenient second daughter who'd finally stopped playing her assigned role. As I drove away, one thought crystallized in my mind. I was going to prove them wrong. And when I did, they'd regret every moment they'd spent underestimating me. I ended up at Aunt Clara's house that night, my hands still shaking as I clutched a cup of chamomile tea. Her Victorian home had always been my sanctuary, filled with antiques and the lingering scent of lavender. Tonight it felt like my last refuge. Your father called, Aunt Clara said, settling into her worn leather armchair. He seems to think you're being unreasonable. Of course he does. The tea burned my throat. Did he mention the part where they've saved nothing for my education? Or how they expect me to spend my life serving pancakes while Emily becomes a lawyer? Aunt Clara's eyes narrowed. No, he conveniently left that out. A knock at the door made me jump. Aunt Clara touched my shoulder as she passed, her grip surprisingly strong for a woman of 70. I heard murmured voices, then my mother's distinctive pleading tone. "Sarah, please, we need to talk." I set down my cup with enough force to splash tea onto the antique coffee table. "There's nothing to talk about." My mother appeared in the doorway looking smaller than usual. "Your father didn't mean—" "Yes, he did." I stood up. "He meant every word. He always has." "You're both upset. If we could just sit down as a family—" "We're not a family. We're Emily's support system, and I'm just the backup plan that never quite measured up." Aunt Clara returned, her face set in lines I recognized from childhood, the expression she wore when she was about to shake things up. "Linda," she said, "sit down. We need to discuss some things." My mother perched on the edge of the sofa, twisting her wedding ring. "Clara, this is between us and Sarah." "No, it's not." Aunt Clara opened a drawer in her desk, pulling out a thick envelope. "Sarah, I've been waiting for the right moment to give you this. I suppose that moment is now." The envelope felt heavy in my hands. Inside was a bank statement showing an account in my name, with a balance that made my eyes widen. "I started saving for both you girls when you were born," Aunt Clara said. "Your parents knew about Emily's fund, but I kept yours separate. I had a feeling you might need it more." My mother's face went pale. "Clara, you had no right." "I had every right. I've watched for years as you and Robert poured everything into Emily while Sarah fought for scraps of attention. Well, now she has options." The numbers on the statement blurred as tears filled my eyes. College tuition, a future, freedom. "You can't do this," my mother whispered. "I already have." Aunt Clara's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "Sarah, the money is yours. No strings attached. You can use it for college, start a business, whatever you choose." My mother stood abruptly. "Robert will hear about this." "Good," Aunt Clara replied. "Tell him his sister sees exactly what he's done to his daughters. Both of them." After my mother left, slamming the door behind her, I sat in silence, staring at the statement. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I finally asked. "I wanted to see if they'd do the right thing on their own." Aunt Clara sighed. "I should have known better. Emily's fund is separate and safe. This isn't about punishing her, Sarah. It's about giving you the chance you deserve." I thought about Emily, golden child Emily, who'd never had to wonder if she was enough. "They'll try to make me share it with her." "They can try." Aunt Clara's smile was sharp. "But the account is in your name only. I made sure of that." Looking at her, I saw the steel beneath her gentle exterior. She'd been playing the long game, watching and waiting, preparing for this moment. "What do I do now?" I asked. "Whatever you want. That's the beauty of it." She leaned forward. "But might I suggest starting with that business degree you've always dreamed about?" For the first time since overhearing my father's words, I felt something like hope, but mixed with it was something darker, a determination to show them exactly what their practical daughter could do. "They'll never forgive you for this," I said. Aunt Clara's laugh was dry as autumn leaves. "My dear, at my age, forgiveness is far less interesting than justice. Now, shall we look at college applications?" I smiled, feeling the weight of the envelope in my hands. It wasn't just money, it was ammunition. And I intended to use every bullet. 3 months into my first semester at business school, Aunt Clara called with news that made my coffee go cold. Emily's perfect life was imploding, and for once I had a front-row seat to the disaster. "Mark was arrested this morning," Aunt Clara said, her voice crackling through the phone. "Securities fraud. It's all over the local news." I switched to speaker and pulled up the news site. There he was, Mark Johnson, Emily's boyfriend of 2 years, being led out of his investment firm in handcuffs. The golden boy who'd charmed our parents at every family dinner was now accused of running a Ponzi scheme that had cost his clients millions. "Emily must be devastated," I said, surprised to find I meant it. "That's not all." Aunt Clara paused. "She knew Sarah. She worked in the firm's legal department. They're investigating her involvement." The satisfaction I'd expected to feel didn't come. Instead, my stomach twisted. How bad is it? Your father's firm is distancing itself. They've put her on indefinite leave. Your parents... Another pause. They're selling the lake house to cover her legal fees. The lake house? The same one they'd refused to mortgage for my education. My phone buzzed with another call, Emily's number. I declined it, watching as it immediately lit up again. She's been trying to reach you, Aunt Clara said. I'm not ready to talk to her. Sometimes people surprise us, Sarah, even the ones who've hurt us most. I ended the call and sat in silence, watching Emily's name flash on my screen again and again. Finally, I picked up. Sarah? Her voice was raw, nothing like her usual polished tones. I need your help. That's new. I deserve that. She took a shuddering breath. But please just listen. I can't talk to Mom and Dad about this. They wouldn't understand. Understand what? That their perfect daughter isn't so perfect? That I knew what Mark was doing, and I looked the other way. The words tumbled out. I found discrepancies in the paperwork months ago. He convinced me it was just aggressive investment strategy, that everyone did it. I wanted to believe him. Why are you telling me this? Because you're the only one who won't be shocked that I failed. Her laugh was bitter. You've been expecting it all along, haven't you? I thought about all the times I'd wished for this, for Emily to fall, for our parents to see her flaws. The reality felt hollow. The investigators, she continued, they're offering a deal. If I testify against Mark, they'll grant me immunity. But Mom and Dad, they keep talking about loyalty, about standing by him. They don't understand what he really is. And what's that? A monster in an expensive suit, her voice cracked. Just like I was a fraud in designer clothes, pretending to be something I'm not. I closed my eyes, remembering all the perfect family photos. Emily always front and center, me relegated to the edges. Why should I help you? Because you're smarter than me, Sarah. You always were. You saw through everything. Our parents, their expectations, this whole facade. I need that clarity now. You want my advice? Take the deal. Burn it all down. Silence stretched between us. Then, will you come with me to the prosecutor's office? I thought about my morning class, the midterm I should be studying for. When? Tomorrow at 9. She hesitated. I know I don't deserve your help. No, you don't. I cut her off. But I'll be there. Not for you. For the truth. After we hung up, I sat staring at my reflection in the darkened window. The sister who'd always lived in Emily's shadow was now the one she turned to for strength. The irony wasn't lost on me. My phone lit up with a text from our father. Emily needs her family united right now. Whatever issues you have with us need to wait. I typed back 4 words. I'll handle it myself. Just like I always had. Tomorrow I'd watch Emily dismantle her perfect life piece by piece. Part of me would enjoy it. I wasn't saint enough to pretend otherwise. But another part recognized something familiar in her voice, the sound of someone realizing their whole life had been built on shadows and lies. I opened my laptop and began researching securities fraud cases. If Emily was going to burn it all down, I'd make sure she did it right. After all, revenge is a dish best served with impeccable legal documentation. The Dean's List notification arrived the same morning as Emily's sentencing. I stared at both messages on my phone, wondering if this was Karma's idea of poetry. Top of my class in business school while my sister faced 18 months of probation and mandatory community service. My father's name lit up my screen. I hadn't spoken to him since the prosecutor's office, but I answered anyway. Your mother and I are having dinner at Lorenzo's tonight, he said, skipping any greeting. We need to discuss Emily's situation. I have exams. This is family, Sarah. More important than any test. I watched students stream past my dorm window, heading to class. Funny how family wasn't more important than Emily's law school when it came to my education. That's not fair. Actually, it's exactly fair. Emily made her choices. She can deal with the consequences. She's lost everything, he said, his voice cracking. Her career, her reputation. And you're still more worried about her than proud of me. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Silence stretched between us. Then, what do you mean? I made Dean's List, first semester of business school, not that you asked. More silence. I could almost see him processing this information, trying to fit it into his worldview where Emily was the achiever and I was the practical one. That's wonderful, Sarah. But right now, Emily needs help. Of course, I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. You know what? I have to go. Good luck with dinner. I ended the call and opened my laptop, pulling up the business proposal I'd been working on. Greg Matthews, the restaurant chain owner who'd given me my first job, had mentioned an internship opportunity. My proposal was due tomorrow. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. Emily stood there, looking smaller in jeans and a plain sweater. No more designer labels. Aunt Clara told me about Dean's List, she said. Congratulations. I left the door open, but returned to my desk. Thanks, she hovered in the doorway. Mum and Dad don't get it, do they? How hard you've worked. They don't want to get it. It doesn't fit their narrative. I didn't either. She stepped inside, closing the door. I believed what they believed, that I was the successful one, the one with potential. But you? She picked up one of my textbooks. You're going to surpass everything they ever imagined for me. Is that why you're here? To acknowledge my potential? No. She set the book down. I'm here because Dad called. They're planning to ask you for money tonight for my legal fees. The room seemed to tilt slightly. What? The lake house sale fell through. They're desperate. She wrapped her arms around herself. I told them not to ask you, but they won't listen. They still think they can fix everything for me. I turned back to my laptop, fingers hovering over the keyboard. And what do you think? I think it's time I fix things myself. She moved toward the door. I got a job. Nothing special. Administrative work at a small firm, but it's honest work. Why are you telling me this? Because you were right. About everything. And I wanted you to know that, before they try to drag you back into their version of reality tonight. After she left, I sat staring at my business proposal. The internship would be demanding. 60-hour weeks, intense training, no room for family drama. Exactly what I needed. I opened my phone and typed a message to my father. Can't make dinner. Deadline for an opportunity I can't miss. Emily knows how to reach me if she needs to. Then I turned back to my proposal, adding a final section about navigating complex business relationships and maintaining professional boundaries. Greg Matthews would appreciate the irony, even if he never knew the full story. My phone buzzed with responses from my parents, but I didn't read them. Instead, I focused on my work, letting their messages pile up like the years of expectations I was finally learning to ignore. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying someone else's dreams. Sometimes it's about building your own, brick by brick, while they watch from the sidelines, finally understanding what they failed to see. Life has a twisted sense of humor. I discovered this standing outside Pete's diner, watching Emily tie on the same apron our father had once intended for me. Her hands shook as she struggled with the strings, her manicured nails a stark contrast against the worn fabric. Greg Matthews stood beside me, his presence a reminder of why we were here. Your sister starts training today? Apparently. I checked my watch. We should head inside. The investment meeting. Can wait 5 minutes. He studied Emily through the window. Interesting choice, her working here. Desperate times. I adjusted my blazer, the fabric smooth and expensive against my skin. It's the only place that would hire her with her record. The bell chimed as we entered. Emily's head snapped up, her eyes widening at my business attire. I pretended not to notice, leading Greg to our usual booth. Sarah. Emily approached, notepad trembling slightly. I didn't know you were coming in today. Monthly investment meeting with Greg, we always have it here. I kept my voice neutral. Coffee black, Greg. The same. He watched Emily hurry away. You didn't warn her? Should I have? The door chimed again. Our parents walked in, stopping short when they saw me. Of course they'd come to support Emily's first day. The irony wasn't lost on me. Sarah? My mother stepped forward. We didn't expect... Clearly, I turned to Greg. The projection reports show a 30% increase in revenue since implementing your new system. My father approached our table, his presence casting a shadow over our papers. You look well, Sarah. The business world suits you. Dad. Emily returned with our coffee, nearly spilling it. It's fine, Emily. I pulled out my laptop. They're here for you, not me. Greg and I have work to discuss. Actually, my father cleared his throat, we hope to speak with both of you about the family trust. The laptop screen blurred slightly. What trust? Your grandfather's. He glanced at Greg. Perhaps we could discuss this privately. Greg's my business partner. Anything you need to say, you can say in front of him. My mother touched Emily's arm. Sweetheart, maybe you should take your break now. The trust, my father continued, was meant to be split between you girls, but with Emily's legal fees and the conditions of her probation, the pieces clicked into place. You want my half? We want to protect your sister's future. Greg set down his coffee cup with deliberate care. Robert, perhaps this isn't the best time. When is the best time? My voice cut through the diner's morning chatter. When Emily needs more money? When you've run out of ways to prop up her mistakes? Sarah, my mother pleaded, she's trying to rebuild. By taking my inheritance, after everything? I stood, gathering my papers. Greg, we should continue this at the office. Sarah, please. Emily stepped forward, still clutching her notepad. I didn't know they were going to do this. I told them not to. Save it. I met her eyes. You know what's funny? Dad always said I should work here because it was practical, because it was all I could hope for. Now look at us. My father's face darkened. That's enough. No, it's not enough. I turned to Greg. You know why I work so hard? Why I've doubled our profits in 6 months? Because they taught me that nothing would ever be handed to me. And they were right. The diner had gone quiet, other customers pretending not to watch the drama unfolding. Keep the trust, I said, gathering my things. Consider it payment for showing me exactly who I could become by being nothing like any of you. Greg followed me out, waiting until we reached the car to speak. That was quite a scene. I apologize. It won't affect our business. Sarah. He touched my shoulder. I'm promoting you to regional manager. You've earned it, and clearly you need to get as far from this town as possible. I gripped my laptop, knuckles white. Through the diner window, I could see Emily wiping tables while our parents hovered nearby, still trying to fix her life while mine expanded beyond their reach. When do I start? How fast can you pack? I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting away. 6 months into my role as regional manager, Aunt Clara died. The news came via text from Emily, of all people. 3 words that shattered my carefully constructed new life. Aunt Clara's gone. I stood in my office overlooking the Chicago skyline, my reflection ghostly in the window. The quarterly reports I'd been reviewing blurred into meaningless shapes. My phone buzzed again. Emily. The funeral's Saturday. She left something for you. I booked the first flight home, arriving to find my parents' car already in Aunt Clara's driveway. Of course they'd be here, probably already dividing up her possessions like they'd tried to divide my inheritance. The key was still under the ceramic frog where she'd always kept it. Inside, voices drifted from her study. We have to tell her, my mother was saying, before she finds out some other way. Tell me what? I stepped into the doorway. They jumped, guilty faces turning toward me. Emily sat in Aunt Clara's chair, holding a familiar envelope. Sarah, my father stepped forward. We didn't expect you so soon. Clearly. I noticed the open safe behind the desk, papers scattered across the surface. What are you doing? Emily held up the envelope. Aunt Clara left letters. And recordings. And she recorded everything, my mother whispered. All our conversations about you and Emily, about the college fund, about how you planned to use me as Emily's backup plan. The words tasted bitter. I already knew that. No, Emily's voice cracked. About how they planned to use both of us, how they manipulated everything, played us against each other. Even Aunt Clara's money was part of their plan. The room tilted slightly. What? My father reached for me. Sarah, we can explain. Don't touch me. I snatched the envelope from Emily. Inside was a USB drive and a letter in Aunt Clara's elegant handwriting. My dearest Sarah, it began. By now you've discovered that your parents' manipulation runs deeper than you imagined. The money I gave you wasn't just savings. It was evidence. Every transaction, every conversation recorded. Your father's firm has been embezzling funds for years, using both you and Emily as unwitting covers. The letter dropped from my trembling hands. You used us. Both of us. We were trying to protect the family, my father said. The firm was failing. So you set Emily up with Mark, knowing he was running a Ponzi scheme. Let her take the fall while you cleaned up the evidence. Emily made a small, broken sound. They knew. All along they knew what Mark was doing. And me? I turned to my mother. Was anything real? Or was I just another piece in your game? We're still your parents, she pleaded. Everything we did was for the family. I laughed, the sound harsh and foreign. No, it was for you. For your reputation, your lifestyle, your precious image. My phone buzzed. Greg Matthews calling. Probably wondering why his regional manager had suddenly flown cross-country without explanation. Sarah, Emily stood up. Aunt Clara left something else. Evidence that could expose everything. She wanted us to decide together what to do with it. I stared at my sister, seeing not the golden child who'd had everything handed to her, but another victim of our parents' schemes. You knew, I said to Emily, about the recordings. That's why you've been reaching out. She nodded. Aunt Clara told me last month she wanted us to know the truth before she couldn't tell us herself. My phone buzzed again. Greg's name flashed on the screen, a reminder of the life I'd built, the success I'd achieved thinking it was all to prove my parents wrong. But they'd known. They'd planned it all, probably counting on my drive to succeed, on Emily's fall from grace, on our predictable reactions to their careful manipulations. Sarah, Emily's voice was small, what do we do now? I looked at our parents, these strangers who'd orchestrated our entire lives like some twisted chess game. Then at Emily, who'd lost everything only to discover she'd never really had it to begin with. My phone buzzed a third time. We do what Aunt Clara wanted, I said finally. We decide together. But this time we make our own moves. The USB drive felt heavy in my hand, carrying the weight of truths that could destroy what remained of our family, or finally set us free. The conference room at Matthew's Restaurant Group felt too small for the weight of what we were about to do. Emily sat beside me, her waitress uniform replaced by a borrowed business suit, while Greg Matthews studied the USB drive's contents displayed on the projection screen. This is more than embezzlement, Greg said, pausing on a particularly damning spreadsheet. Your father's firm was running a sophisticated fraud scheme for years, using both his daughters as unwitting accomplices, Emily added, her voice hollow. The perfect cover story. The door opened. Our parents walked in, followed by their lawyer. My father's confident stride faltered when he saw Emily sitting beside me. What is this about, Sarah? He tried to take control, as always. Your mother and I have a charity function. Sit down. My voice cut through his pretense. You're going to want to hear this. Greg clicked to the next slide. Our father's signature on documents linking his firm to Mark's Ponzi scheme. Evidence of shell companies set up in both Emily's and my names. Where did you get these? The lawyer leaned forward. Aunt Clara kept receipts. I met my father's eyes. All of them. This is absurd, he blustered. Emily, surely you don't believe... I testified against Mark, Emily interrupted. I can testify against you, too. Our mother's perfectly manicured hands trembled. We were protecting you both. By making me the fool guy? Emily's laugh was bitter. By pushing Sarah into the restaurant business so you'd have a legitimate front for laundering money? I placed 2 folders on the table. Option 1. We turn everything over to the FBI. You go to prison, the firm collapses, and the Thompson name becomes synonymous with fraud. Option 2, our father's lawyer asked quickly. You sign these papers transferring control of the firm to Emily and me. You retire quietly, move to that beach house in Florida you bought with stolen money and never contact us again. You can't be serious. Our father stood. Everything I built was built on lies. I remained seated, calm. Everything you made us believe about ourselves, about each other, it was all part of your game. We're your parents, our mother pleaded. We love you. No, Emily's voice cracked. You loved what we could do for you. There's a difference. Greg cleared his throat. The FBI has been notified. They're waiting for our call. You have 10 minutes to decide. Our father reached for the folders, but I pulled them back. One more thing. The diner, Pete's. You're signing it over to the staff. They've earned it. The diner? He looked confused. What does that matter now? It matters because it's where this started. Where you thought I belonged. I smiled. Consider it karma. The minutes ticked by. Emily gripped my hand under the table as our parents whispered with their lawyer. Finally, our father picked up a pen. You'll regret this, he said, signing. Someday you'll understand. We already understand. Emily took the pen, adding her signature where needed. That's the problem. After they left, Greg studied the signed papers. You realize you've just become CEO of a major investment firm. Co-CEO, I corrected, looking at Emily. If you want it? She straightened her borrowed blazer. I did pass the bar exam even if I never practiced. Besides, someone needs to clean up their mess. And you? Greg asked me. Still interested in running my restaurant chain? I thought about the diner, about all the paths that had led us here. Actually, I have some ideas about expansion. Emily's firm could provide the capital. Legal capital, Emily added with a faint smile. We walked out together, leaving our parents' lawyer to pack up his briefcase. Outside, the sun was setting over the city skyline. Was this the revenge you wanted? Emily asked softly. No, I admitted. It's better. They wanted us to compete, to tear each other down. Instead, we're building something new. She squared her shoulders. Together. I nodded, watching our parents' car disappear into traffic. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying what others built. It's about building something they never thought possible. The key to Aunt Clara's house felt heavier than usual as I unlocked the door one last time. The realtor's sign in the yard cast long shadows in the evening light. Inside, most of the furniture was gone, leaving only the essentials Emily and I had decided to keep. Her footsteps echoed behind me as we entered the study. Found something else in the safe, she said, holding up a DVD case. It's labeled, for Sarah and Emily, after. We sat on the floor using my laptop to play the disc. Aunt Clara's face filled the screen, recorded months before her death. My dear girls, she began, if you're watching this, you've discovered the truth about your parents. But there's one more thing you need to know. Emily gripped my arm as Aunt Clara continued. Your parents didn't just manipulate you. They manipulated me too. Made me think I was protecting you by keeping their secrets. It took me too long to realize that protection sometimes means letting the truth hurt. The camera shifted, showing documents, recordings, a lifetime of evidence gathered not just against our parents, but against an entire network of fraud. I'm not proud that I waited, Aunt Clara's voice continued, but I wanted you both strong enough to handle what came next. Sarah, your business acumen. Emily, your legal knowledge. Together, you're more powerful than they ever imagined. Emily paused the video. She planned this. All of it. No, I said, understanding finally. She gave us the tools to plan it ourselves. We watched the rest in silence. When it ended, I closed the laptop, looking around the study where everything had started. The diner staff signed the ownership papers today, Emily said. They're renaming it Clara's. I smiled, remembering our father's dismissal of my potential, his insistence that the diner was all I could hope for. Now it would stand as a monument to the aunt who'd seen what he couldn't. The FBI wants to interview Dad again, Emily continued. They found connections to 3 more investment firms. Let them. We have our own empire to build. She studied me. Do you ever wonder if we're just playing into their hands, becoming what they wanted us to be? No. I stood, running my fingers along Aunt Clara's empty desk. They wanted us to compete, to tear each other down. Instead, we're stronger together. Emily joined me at the desk. The board meeting's tomorrow. Ready to announce the merger. Matthews Thompson Holdings. I tested the words. Think Greg will mind being the junior partner? He's getting 3 new restaurant locations out of the deal. He'll survive. We gathered our things, preparing to leave Aunt Clara's house for the last time. At the door, Emily hesitated. Sarah, that night you overheard Mom and Dad talking about the diner. Was that really when everything changed? I thought about it, remembering the anger, the hurt, the years of feeling second best. No. Everything changed when I stopped letting their version of me define who I could become. And who are you now? The question hung in the air as I locked the door. Through the window I could see Aunt Clara's garden still blooming despite her absence. I'm someone who knows the difference between revenge and justice, I said finally. And more importantly, I'm someone who knows which one matters more. Emily nodded, understanding. We walked to our separate cars, headed to our separate homes, but connected now by something stronger than shared pain or shared triumph. I started my engine, watching Emily pull away first. Tomorrow we'd face the board, announce the merger, begin building something neither our parents nor Aunt Clara could have imagined. But tonight, in the quiet of Aunt Clara's empty house, I felt the last pieces of my old self, the angry, overlooked second daughter, finally fall away. The truth about revenge isn't that it heals you. It's that sometimes in pursuing it, you find something better. The power to rewrite your own story, on your own terms. I pulled away from the curb, leaving Aunt Clara's house and all its ghosts behind. Ahead lay the future we'd chosen, not the one chosen for us. And that, more than any revenge, was the sweetest victory of all.